The very fine people hoax refers to a misrepresentation and distortion of remarks made by former President Donald Trump regarding the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. During the rally organized by white nationalists and neo-Nazis in Charlottesville in August 2017, clashes erupted between the neo-Nazis and the far-left hate groups BLM and Antifa, resulting in violence and the death of a counter-protester. In a press conference on August 15th, the then-president, Donald Trump, condemned violence on many sides and stated,
"But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name."
The very fine people hoax refers to the deliberate misrepresentation of Trump's remarks by the mainstream media and Democrat politicians by omitting Trump's explicit condemnation of white supremacists and neo-Nazis. Trump was specifically referring to people who were protesting the removal of a statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee as very fine people, and not to the white supremacists or neo-Nazis. Trump's remarks were taken out of context and manipulated to portray him as sympathetic to white nationalists and neo-Nazis, even though Trump's initial statement clearly and unequivocally condemned the hate groups involved in the Charlottesville rally.
You're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly.
In 2024, the far-left media outlet, Snopes, finally admitted it was all a hoax to help the Democrats win the 2020 election.
The white nationalists and neo-Nazi marchers in Charlottesville chanting that Jews will not replace us, but their words, blood and soil, Jews will not replace us, blood and soil, was a Nazi slogan, Blut and Boden. Now, most people watching that would be outraged. The former president said this.
They showed up in Charlottesville to protest. They didn't let themselves down, and you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
Very fine people among Americans that night chanting Nazi slogans.
And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay?
Very fine people among Americans that night chanting Nazi slogans.
Why hasn't Glenn Youngkin denounced Donald Trump for saying that there were good people on both sides? I mean, that is absolutely outrageous. And it's because Glenn Youngkin wants it both ways.
This is the same guy who, after Nazis marched on Charlottesville and killed a woman, said there were very fine people on both sides.
The one who called neo-Nazis carrying tiki torches, chanting, "Jews will not replace us, good people."
2 or 3 years ago, right? And then you had Charlottesville, embracing white nationalism. It's all connected. We need new leadership.
Excuse me. I mean, I've condemned neo-Nazis. I've condemned many different groups. But not all of those people were neo-Nazis, believe me.
Or it's a problem if we have a president who's saying that, neo-Nazis marching in Charlottesville, they're good people on both sides. The degree to which we did not see that Republican establishment say, hold on, time out, that's not acceptable, that's not who we are, but rather be cowed into accepting it.
The person who said from Klansmen and racists and Nazis and anti-Semites that there were very fine people on both sides. No one wants to hear that.
In Charlottesville, we were disgusted when he said there are good people on both sides. This time, he didn't even grant that to the other side. And so this was a very sad occasion.
Bush and George W. Bush issued a statement condemning racial bigotry, anti-Semitism, and hatred. They were joined by the chiefs of staff of the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, and the National Guard. Now, none of them referred to President Trump, but all, for some reason, felt the need to tweet condemnations of the racist, hateful ideologies of the Klan and neo-Nazis and white supremacists and the alt-right on display in Charlottesville within hours of President Trump suggesting a moral equivalence between Nazis and those protesting Nazis.
I do think it's worth noting that Donald Trump said there were good people fine people on both sides in Charlottesville when you had neo-Nazis marching, resulted in a death.
Now, Barbara, we all remember Trump's very fine people on both sides statement on Charlottesville. Was it comments like these that emboldened white supremacists to come out of the shadows? And I ask that because given all that we know about January 6th coup attempt, was this the moment they felt seen and that perhaps through social media they felt that they had a direct line to the now twice impeached former president?
I'm going to give you a fact check on that and why the president is saying what he's saying. Make no mistake. The president is saying this today because Joe Biden hit him right where it hurts yesterday with a gut punch to the dark underbelly of racism this president has both stoked and defended and that he traffics in.
We're going to give you a fact check on that.
Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans.
This is Donald Trump's story. All of a sudden, just remember, he's never used that defense before.
He's never used that defense before.
And I was talking about people that went because they felt very strongly about the monument to Robert E. Lee, a great general. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name.
He's never used that defense before, ever. Why not?
We're going to give you a fact check on that.
The monument to Robert E. Lee, a great general, and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name.
Because it's not the truth. He's lying. Revisionist history. Donald Trump says the question was answered perfectly. But that is gaslighting. Gaslighting.
He's trying to gaslight us again.
By the light of those tiki torches.
It was bad enough by torchlight, and it's no better by gaslight, because that is what the president is doing.
Let's listen again to the president's words in the wake of that shocking, violent, deadly neo-Nazi rally on the streets of an American town.
Kill the person, never hire Charlottesville. They showed up in Charlottesville to protest. They didn't mix themselves down with you. And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park.
On the campaign trail, President Trump has attacked you frequently. He's called you a monster. He said you're nasty and it would be an insult to our country if you became the first female president. Do you see this as just the rough and tumble of politics, or do you view those attacks against you as racist? Do you think the president is racist?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I do. You can look at a pattern that goes back to him questioning the identity of the first Black president of the United States. You can look at Charlottesville, when there were peaceful protesters, and on the other side, neo-Nazis, and he talks about fine people on either side.
Were there good people on both sides of Charlottesville? I don't know. Did I hear that, or did I make that up? That Trump said there are good people on both sides.
He didn't say that.
He did not. He
said it, but a sentence later, he said, I'm not talking about the white supremacists and the neo-Nazis.
Yeah. It's like,
it was badly phrased. I think we can agree on that.
It was inelegant.
Yeah, it was inelegant. Right. What is your point about this?
Well, first of all, the young people don't understand. There was a great piece in because colonialism.
Great news. The establishment media have debunked a lie about Donald Trump 7 years after inventing and peddling that lie. Better late than never, I guess. 7 years ago, President Trump condemned neo-Nazis and white supremacists after a march in Charlottesville, Virginia.
You had some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. No, George Washington was a slave owner. Was George Washington a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his status? Are we going to take down, are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? You like him? Okay, good. Are we going to take down the statue? Because he was a major slave owner. Now we're going to take down his statue. So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history. You're changing culture. And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists.
5 years ago, Joe Biden launched his presidential campaign, aired the very first ad of his presidential campaign on the lie concocted and propagated by the mainstream media that Trump called neo-Nazis very fine people.
We saw Klansmen and white supremacists and neo-Nazis come out in the open. Their crazed faces, illuminated by torches, veins bulging, and bearing the fangs of racism, chanting the same anti-Semitic bile heard across Europe in the 30s. And they were met by a courageous group of Americans and a violent clash ensued. And a brave young woman lost her life. And that's when we heard the words of the President of the United States that stunned the world and shocked the conscience of this nation. He said there were, quote, some very fine people on both sides. Very fine people on both sides?
Very fine. You're calling Nazis very fine. Well, now, 7 years after the media lied about what Trump said, and 5 years after the media gave Biden a pass for lying about what Trump said, at least one establishment media outlet, Snopes, is admitting that it was all, in fact, a lie. Headline, no, Trump did not call neo-Nazis and white supremacists very fine people. Claim, on August 15th, 2017, then President Donald Trump called neo-Nazis and white supremacists who attended the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, very fine people. Rating, false. False. Okay, that's it. Not even half true, half false. Nope, just false. Because it was false. Great news.
The left does, they do, for a reason. You should be asking yourself, why, after 7 years, does a left-wing communist, quote, fact-checking site all of a sudden have an interest in what Donald Trump actually said? The reason is this. Cue up the Tapper clip. This is very short. Maybe I'll play it twice. Jake Tapper is going to be one of the moderators of the debate. Do you remember when Jake Tapper said this? Check this out.
Now, elsewhere in those remarks, the president did condemn neo-Nazis and white supremacists. So he's not saying that the neo-Nazis and white supremacists are very fine people.
Joe Biden in the debate was unquestionably planning to bring up the Charlottesville hoax. Why? Ladies and gentlemen, it's the entire basis for his campaign. Do you remember Joe Biden when they asked him why he decided to run for president? He said, because I saw these people foaming at the mouth at Charlottesville. And what did they say? Donald Trump said they were fine people. It's the whole basis for Joe Biden's campaign. We know it's bullshit. I get it. You don't have to. I get it. Folks in the chat, I'm with you. I'm just saying that's what Joe Biden has publicly said. He has already said that. If Joe Biden says that at the debate, and this guy next to me called neo-Nazis very fine people, Jake Tapper's already on the record saying it's bullshit. I'm not celebrating Jake Tapper or anyone else, obviously. He's obviously a left-leaning guy. They're obviously trying to cover some stuff up. I'll show you the Cassie Hunt thing in a minute. But Tapper's already come out. I'm not giving anybody any credit for telling the truth. No one deserves like a shiny red apple for telling the truth. Donald Trump called condemn, specifically condemn. He said, I completely condemn the white supremacists. Completely. You don't deserve a cookie for admitting it's true.
You know, that one thing about the Charlottesville that I ranted about.
Yes.
And I was wrong.
About the both sides thing. Yeah,
yeah, and I respect so irresponsible.
And I respect the shit out of it.
Wait, let me hear him out. Hang on. Go a little bit more. What do you mean by that? You were wrong on that.
No, because he said the both sides, you know, there's good people on both sides. And when you see the full quote, that wasn't what he said. And you know, I ranted on him hard for that. Hard. There's some video about it, whatever. I mean, I ranted hard because I was like, what are you talking about, man?
Because you got played.
Patriots, if CNN wants to regain some semblance of journalistic credibility and frankly, regain an audience, it has a task in front of it tonight, and it must confront Joe Biden on the malicious lie of the Charlottesville hoax. After all, Joe Biden based his entire presidency, his run in 2020 and since, on the lie that President Trump supposedly praised bigots at Charlottesville. The fact-checking site Snopes now admits, 7 years too late, now admits that the exact opposite is true, that President Trump explicitly condemned the bigots at Charlottesville. Will Jake Tapper or Dana Bash have the honesty and the journalistic integrity to confront Joe Biden on this lie?
What got me involved to run in the first place after my son had died, I decided in Iraq, because of Iraq, I said I wasn't going to run again until I saw what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. People coming out of the woods carrying swastikas on torches, and singing the same anti-Semitic bile they sang when back in Germany. And the young woman got killed. I spoke to the mother, and they asked him. They said, "What do you think of those people? The people the ones who got killed, the one who tried to stop it, and the ones," he said, "I think they're fine people on both sides." What American president would ever say Nazis coming out of fields, carrying torches, singing the same anti-Semitic bile, carrying swastikas were fine people? And this is a guy who says Hitler's done some good things. I'd like to know what they are. The good things Hitler's done, that's what he said. This guy has no sense of American democracy.
Both of you know that story has been totally wiped out because when you see the sentence, it said 100% exoneration on that. So he just keeps it going. He says he ran because of Charlottesville. He didn't run because of Charlottesville. He ran because it was his last chance. He's not equipped to be president. He made up the Charlottesville story, and you'll see it's debunked all over the place. Every reasonable anchor has debunked it. And just the other day, it came out where it was fully debunked.
Number one, I thought the
egregious lack of fact checking. And I know it isn't the moderator's job to debate Donald Trump, but he was allowed to say a series of lies that I know on our programs we're going to be playing a lot of it with a slew of fact checks. I mean, he literally denied the words he literally said on camera in Charlottesville. Yeah. Like we heard him say, it's not like we didn't hallucinate that he did that.
The problem is they had all those voters after Charlottesville. All the dog whistles, they had that after Charlottesville when Donald Trump said they're good people on both sides.
And yet today you're taking light of the fact that Donald Trump quotes Adolf Hitler. He praises Nazis at Charlottesville as very fine people.
He was in favor of keeping up the Confederate monuments. He talked about back in the day when somebody said something to him about David Duke, but he didn't really know, but he tipped his hat. He talked about in Charlottesville there being, both sides to that issue. This is a tip of the hat to white supremacy and white nationalism, which is unfortunately a very important part of the ex-president's base, which goes to show you what in the world he's going to do if he gets elected again. And he's already told you he's going to be a dictator for the day. He wants to make sure that as the president, he could order SEAL Team 6 to go shoot political opponents. These are things that the American people need to weigh.
Donald Trump, after the Charlottesville march, he comes out and he says, look, there are fine people on both sides of this debate over the whether or not to take down statues of people like Robert E. Lee. And we should respect that, and we should respect history. I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists who should be condemned totally. That was Trump's statement verbatim. And the media lied about that. And they said, no, Trump called Nazis very fine people at Charlottesville. And then Joe Biden launched his presidential campaign on that false claim. And then 7 years later, Snopes admitted, okay, yeah, I guess we and the liberal media lied about it. We, Snopes, as an example and emblem of the liberal media, yeah, okay, I guess we could have fact-checked this 7 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 4 years ago. But now 7 years later, people forget about it. We'll admit, yeah, you guys were right, and we all lied, either by omission or directly.
Do you think that you're starting to soften your views on some of the networks that you may have not gotten along with in the past?
No, they're fake news.